Have you ever felt invisible in a place where you thought you finally belonged? Imagine working your whole life to earn a seat in first-class success within reach. Comfort promised only to be told, politely but firmly. No. No champagne. No explanation. Just the cold silence of someone deciding, you don't fit the picture of luxury. Now, pause for a moment. What would you do? Would you argue? Would you shrink in your seat and swallow the humiliation? Or would you stay calm, knowing that dignity doesn't need to shout to be heard? This is the story of Ava Robinson, a powerful black CEO whose quiet strength changed the course of an entire airline. A simple refusal, a single glass of champagne denied set off a chain of events that no one expected. It's a story about grace in the face of injustice, about choosing restraint over rage, and about one phone call that became the turning point for everyone on that flight. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm long enough for the world to see what it's done. So ask yourself, if it were you in that seat, what would your dignity look like? Would it tremble, or would it rise? Stay with us as we uncover the story behind the moment that changed everything. If this story touches something inside you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because some stories deserve to be told, and this one deserves to be remembered. The morning sun poured through the wide glass walls of LAX, painting the polished floor with streaks of gold. The airport hummed with that familiar rhythm, rolling suitcases, distant boarding calls, the occasional burst of laughter from people beginning their journeys. Ava Robinson stood by gate 54B, holding a cup of black coffee she'd barely touched. Her phone vibrated with calendar alerts, back-to-back meetings, a contract signing, and a dinner she already knew she'd skip. At 42, the CEO of Medixcore Technologies had learned that leadership meant never truly having a day off. Yet there was something about airports that always calmed her. Maybe it was the illusion of motion, people coming and going, crossing paths for only a moment before life scattered them apart again. Ava loved that anonymity. It was one of the few places she could just be someone, not someone important. She adjusted her blazer, checked her watch, 7:25 boarding in 15 minutes. The Aerostar Airlines attendant smiled, scanning her boarding pass. Good morning, Ms. Robinson. First class, seat 2A. Enjoy your flight. Ava smiled back. Thank you, hoping for a quiet one. As she walked down the jet bridge, the cool air from the cabin brushed against her skin. The scent of fresh linen and lemon sanitizer filled the air, the strangely comforting aroma of first class. Plush seats, soft lighting, and the quiet rustle of newspapers. She placed her leather bag in the overhead bin, then sank into her seat. A small luxury, she thought. I've earned this. Across the aisle, a businessman in a gray suit, white. Mid-50s, was already chatting with the flight attendant, laughing as if they'd known each other for years. The attendant, a young woman with bright red lipstick and a name tag that read Chloe Miller, smiled warmly at him, poured champagne into his glass, and topped it with a delicate twist of lemon peel. Ava watched with a quiet amusement. They must really be pushing the premium experience today. When Chloe approached Ava's row, Ava lifted her eyes, ready with a polite smile. Good morning, she said softly. Could I have a glass of champagne, too? Chloe's smile froze for half a second, almost invisible. Then she straightened her posture. I'm sorry, ma'am. We're holding off on serving alcohol until after takeoff. Oh, of course, Ava replied. No problem. Chloe nodded quickly and moved on. 2 minutes later, Ava heard the pop of another bottle, that crisp, unmistakable sound. She turned slightly and saw Chloe pouring champagne for the man in 2B again and for the woman behind him. She blinked. Her smile faltered. It wasn't the champagne that mattered. It was the small, unmistakable feeling of being seen, or rather, not seen. Ava looked down at her hands. Her fingers were still, resting on her lap. She could feel the faint pulse of her heartbeat against her wristwatch. Maybe she was imagining it. Maybe it was just policy, or a small mistake. But somewhere deep in her chest, that old quiet ache began to stir. She had been here before, not in seat 2A, not on this airline, but in boardrooms, hotels, restaurants. The setting changed. The feeling didn't. When the cabin doors closed and the flight attendants began their safety briefing, Ava looked out the window. Los Angeles shimmered below, a city half asleep. As the plane lifted off, she exhaled slowly, trying to let it go. Don't ruin your day over this. You have work to do. You have people waiting in New York. Just let it pass. The plane steadied, and the seatbelt light blinked off. Chloe reappeared with her polished smile, tray in hand serving champagne again, row by row. When she reached Ava, her eyes skipped past her entirely, landing on the man in 2B. Ava leaned slightly forward. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "Excuse me, miss, could I have that champagne?" Now Chloe didn't look at her. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We've run out." The words hung there, cold and efficient. Ava glanced at the tray. 3 glasses still full. She didn't speak, didn't frown, didn't sigh. Just looked long enough for Chloe to feel it, then leaned back into her seat. Across the aisle, Ethan Cooper, the man in 2B, cleared his throat uncomfortably. He looked at Ava, then at Chloe. "She can have mine," he said quietly. "I don't even like champagne." Chloe stiffened. "That's not necessary, sir." She hurried off before anyone could respond. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Ava turned her head toward the window again. Clouds drifted slowly beneath them, endless, pale, indifferent. She could feel every emotion pressing at the edge of her restraint: anger, shame, exhaustion. But beneath all that was something stronger: clarity. She took out her phone and opened the Notes app. Her thumbs moved quickly, precise as a lawyer's pen. Flight 218, Aerostar Airlines. Date May 17, 8:43 a.m. PST, Seat 2A. Attendant Chloe Miller. Incident unequal service deliberate. Witnesses present 2B, possibly 3A. She saved the note, set the phone face down, and closed her eyes. This time, she told herself, you don't walk away. When the captain announced their descent into JFK, Ava felt her body tense again in the quiet before a decision. As passengers unbuckled, she waited until the aisle cleared. Then she stood, slipped on her jacket, and reached for her phone. Outside the cabin door, Chloe stood with her professional smile, saying, "Goodbye. Thank you for flying with us." Ava met her eyes for the first time, the kind of look that doesn't shout. It simply holds you still. "Thank you," Ava said evenly. Then she walked on. At the gate, sunlight hit her face through the terminal windows. She found a quiet corner near the VIP lounge, opened her phone, and scrolled through her contacts until she saw the name Marcus Shaw. She hesitated for just a heartbeat. The old habit to let it go, to be the bigger person, flickered through her mind. But she remembered the champagne tray, the calm dismissal, the small cold cut of invisibility. She pressed call. "Marcus," she said. When his deep voice answered, "I just landed from we have a problem?" The air inside the cabin carried a faint trace of citrus and static. The hum of altitude settling into a low rhythm. First class had gone quiet, that kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, just polite. A curtain of courtesy covering something unsaid. Ava Robinson sat perfectly straight in her seat, her posture effortless, her mind anything but. Her thoughts swirled between disbelief and that familiar weariness she'd learned to hide behind a composed smile. She could still see the moment clearly, the tray gliding past her, the sparkle of champagne under cabin lights, and the invisible line that had been drawn in the air between her and everyone else. Across the aisle. Ethan Cooper cleared his throat again, this time louder. He leaned slightly toward her, his voice low. "Ma'am, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but what happened back there? That was wrong." Ava turned to him, eyes soft. "It's fine," she said. A practiced answer. "I've seen worse." Ethan frowned. Still? You shouldn't have to see worse at all." She gave him a small nod. He meant well, she could tell, but she'd lived long enough to know that well-meaning didn't always mean understanding. Ava had grown used to these moments, the quiet shock on people's faces, when they realized the world wasn't as fair as they wanted it to be. For her, it wasn't news. It was Tuesday. Chloe Miller appeared again, moving through the aisle with the efficiency of someone who knew her rhythm by heart. Her expression was polite, neutral, unreadable. She paused by Ethan's seat. "Would you like a refill?" Sir Ethan hesitated. "No, I'm good, thanks." Chloe smiled and moved on. She didn't glance at Ava. Not once. The city lights of New York still shimmered hundreds of miles away, but Ava could already feel their weight. She had a keynote to deliver in less than 6 hours. Her company was on the brink of finalizing a partnership that would expand its medical AI into 5 new states. The kind of deal that made headlines. She should have been thinking about that, about numbers, projections, and people's lives her technology would change. But all she could see, over and over, was the champagne glass, the way the bubbles caught the light, how easily some people were handed grace while others had to fight for it, one quiet moment at a time. Her phone buzzed against the armrest, a message from her assistant. "Your driver will meet you at Terminal 2 arrivals. Weather looks clear. Good luck with the contract." Ava typed back, "Thank you. See you tomorrow." Then she locked the screen, folded her hands, and stared at her reflection in the window. For years, she had built her empire with restraint, letting logic steer her where emotion once would have. Every battle, every boardroom negotiation, every sideways comment she'd endured, she had learned to turn them into fuel. But something about this moment cut deeper than usual, maybe because it was so casual, so small, so pointless. It wasn't business. It wasn't politics. It was just human decency, denied without a thought. A soft chime signaled the seatbelt sign returning on. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into New York's JFK International Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for landing." Ava adjusted her belt, leaned back, and closed her eyes. The hum of the engines wrapped around her like white noise. Then came another voice. Not from the speakers, from her memory. Her father's voice. "Ava, don't let the world decide who you are. Decide it yourself, every time they make you prove it." She could still see him in his workshop back in Atlanta. Oil-stained hands, tired smile, eyes that saw too much. Her father had driven city buses for 30 years, dealing with the same weary look she'd just seen in the mirror of that champagne glass. He used to say, "Dignity isn't what they give you. Baby, It's what you keep, no matter what, she whispered to herself now, so softly no one could hear. I hear you, Daddy. The landing gear dropped. The plane trembled slightly. A few passengers stirred awake. Chloe moved through the aisle again, securing trays, checking belts, performing the practiced ballet of descent. When she reached Ava's row, she hesitated for a heartbeat. Their eyes met. For the first time, Chloe seemed uncertain, as if she could feel the tension she'd left hanging in the air. Ava's expression didn't change, just calm, still, deliberate. Thank you, Ava said quietly. Chloe blinked, nodded quickly, and kept moving. The plane touched down with a long, heavy sigh, the kind that fills your ears and chest and leaves you still for a moment after the wheels stop. Ethan gathered his laptop bag and turned to Ava. I'm sorry, again, about what happened. That shouldn't have, Ava interrupted him gently. You did the right thing. Mr. Cooper, you noticed. He smiled, unsure how to respond. You're going to make a call, aren't you? Ava raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Let's just say, I've learned who to call. As passengers began filing out, Chloe stood at the exit, voice rehearsed. Thank you for flying with Aerostar. Ava approached. For a second, the noise of the cabin faded, just the two of them. Ava's tone was even, almost kind. Have a good afternoon, Ms. Miller. The use of her name made Chloe's breath catch. She nodded, unable to meet Ava's gaze. Outside, the terminal air was colder than she expected. The sky hung gray, restless with approaching rain. She walked toward the VIP lounge, heels tapping softly on the tile, each step measured. Inside, the lounge smelled of espresso and leather. A television hummed low with muted news. She sat near the window, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Marcus Shaw's name. Marcus, her college friend, the man who'd built an investment firm from nothing, now sitting on the board of half the airlines in the country. He was more than a contact. He was the kind of man who didn't just fix things. He restructured them. Ava took a slow breath. She didn't want revenge. She wanted accountability. There was a difference. She pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then that deep, familiar voice came through. Ava, it's early. You okay, morning? Marcus? Sorry for calling before your coffee. He chuckled. For you, I'll make an exception. What's wrong? Ava looked out the window, the reflection of her own face merging with the runway beyond. I just had an experience on one of your airlines, she said quietly. Aerostar. Flight 218 from L.A. Marcus straightened. Talk to me. She told him everything, her tone steady, precise, almost clinical. The way she described it made it sound like a report, but her voice carried the undercurrent of something heavier. When she finished, Marcus didn't speak right away. Then, calmly, he said, You're sure about this? Absolutely. You have details. I always have details. He exhaled. All right, leave it with me. I'll call Claire Donovan within the hour. Ava leaned back, voice quiet but resolute. Don't make it about me. Marcus, make it about the system. You know I will. When the call ended, Ava sat still for a long time. The rain outside began tapping against the glass, soft, rhythmic, patient. In her mind, she saw her father again, standing at that bus depot, hands in his pockets, watching another long day begin. She smiled faintly. He would have said, Well done, baby. Keep it calm, keep it clean. And she had. Ava opened her notes app once more, added a single line under her earlier entry. Status report escalated to Marcus Shaw pending internal review. Then she closed her phone, folded her hands again, and waited. The sky outside dimmed to silver, and somewhere deep inside her, something quiet shifted. Not anger, not victory, but something steadier. Conviction. The drive from JFK into Manhattan was slow that morning, a gray ribbon of traffic winding through mist and rain. The driver's radio played soft jazz, the kind that fills silence without asking for attention. Ava Robinson sat in the back seat, eyes half closed, forehead resting against the window. Raindrops chased each other down the glass. She wasn't angry. Not really. She was tired. Tired in a way that coffee couldn't fix. Tired of being graceful about the small cuts that came dressed as mistakes. Tired of wondering whether silence made her stronger or just complicit. Her phone vibrated. A message from Marcus Shaw. Claire's seen the footage. Call me when you land at your hotel. Ava typed back, will do, thank you. She set the phone aside and stared out at the skyline ahead. New York, a city that never slept, never paused, never apologized. She had once loved its energy, the way it pushed you, tested you, forced you to become sharper, louder, more. But lately, she had come to love the quiet parts instead, the moments between the noise, when truth had space to breathe. Her thoughts drifted to Chloe Miller. The young woman's face flashed in her mind, the crisp uniform, the cold efficiency. Ava wondered what story lay behind that indifference. Was it ignorance, habit, fear? Or was it simply the comfort of privilege, never needing to see beyond yourself? She closed her eyes. The sound of the rain softened into memory. At the Langston Hotel in Midtown, the lobby smelled faintly of cedar and rain. The concierge greeted Ava by name, her luggage already waiting. She moved through the space with quiet composure, her heels clicking softly across marble, her presence commanding without intention. Once inside her suite, she exhaled deeply, as if the weight of the morning finally had permission to fall away. She poured a glass of water, slipped off her blazer, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. 42, CEO of a billion-dollar company, decorated, respected, feared by a few. Yet standing there, she felt the same fragile humanity she'd carried since childhood. She touched the edge of the counter, steadying herself. Her reflection looked back with calm authority, but her eyes betrayed the exhaustion behind it. You've fought harder battles than this, she told herself, but why do the small ones still hurt the most? Her phone rang. Marcus, she answered. Talk to me, he said. Did Claire watch the footage? She did, twice. Her exact words were, unacceptable. Ava's tone remained even. Good. There's more. Marcus continued. The internal report shows that the attendant, Chloe Miller, has had 2 prior complaints, both dismissed by her supervisor. Ava let out a quiet breath. So this isn't new. No, it's not. Then it's not about her, Ava said softly. It's about the culture that allows her to exist without question. Marcus paused, his voice gentler now. You don't want this to turn into a media storm, do you? I don't, she said. Not yet. I want to give them the chance to do what's right on their own. He chuckled lightly. Still giving people grace? That's why I can't argue with you. Ava smiled faintly. Grace isn't free, Marcus. It's an investment. They spoke for a few more minutes, arranging a private meeting with Aerostar's executive team for the next day. When the call ended, Ava sat on the edge of the bed, the city buzzing faintly outside her window. Her mind replayed every small detail from the flight the moment Chloe's eyes skimmed past her. The tone of that polite dismissal, the awkward kindness from Ethan Cooper. It all folded together into something she couldn't quite name. Not rage, not sadness, something quieter, something heavier. Later that evening, Ava stood by the window, city lights stretching endlessly below. She thought about her father again, the way he used to say the world could be cruel, but dignity was non-negotiable. She whispered it to herself now, the word soft as prayer. Dignity stays. Outside, sirens flared and faded into the hum of Manhattan life. The world went on, unaware that something inside her had shifted. She sat down, opened her laptop, and began to type. To Claire Donovan, CEO, Aerostar Airlines Subject Passenger Experience Flight 218. Dear Ms. Donovan, I am writing not in anger, but in concern. Today I experienced a situation aboard Flight 218 that reflected more than poor service. It reflected a culture of disregard. I was denied service not once, but twice, in a cabin where others were served freely. I understand that mistakes happen, but what troubles me is not the act itself, but the ease with which it occurred, the comfort of exclusion. I believe this incident is an opportunity for your company to look inward. I am not requesting compensation, nor am I seeking headlines. I am asking for acknowledgement, accountability, and a genuine effort to ensure that dignity is not an optional courtesy. Respectfully, Ava Robinson. She reread the email 3 times, not to edit the words, but to measure the tone strong, but not cruel, honest, but not bitter. Then she hit send. It felt like setting something free. The next morning came with pale sunlight and the aroma of fresh coffee drifting through the suite. Ava stood on the balcony, wrapped in a robe, phone in hand. Notifications blinked news updates, business memos, but one message stood out. From Claire Donovan, Subject Passenger Experience Flight 208 Robinson. Thank you for reaching out and for your grace. I've reviewed the footage personally and initiated an immediate investigation. The attendant in question has been suspended pending review. I'd like to meet you in person tomorrow to discuss next steps. Aerostar must do better, and I believe you can help us make that happen. Sincerely, Claire Donovan. CEO Ava lowered the phone slowly. She didn't smile, not yet, but she felt something close to relief, the quiet kind that sits beneath the heart. That afternoon, as she prepared for her keynote address, Ava's assistant handed her a fresh stack of notes. Ms. Robinson, your introduction's in 5 minutes. Ava nodded. Thank you. Lena. As she stepped onto the stage, applause rolled across the room like a warm tide. She adjusted the microphone, her gaze sweeping over a sea of expectant faces, executives, investors, young entrepreneurs hanging on every word. She began to speak about innovation, about technology, about human lives improved through data and design. But somewhere in her second paragraph, her voice softened. Progress, she said slowly, isn't only about what we build, it's about who we become while building it. Her words hung in the air, unplanned but powerful. The audience leaned in. Ava smiled, not the polished CEO smile, but something real. She realized, in that moment, that even the smallest story even one glass of champagne withheld could ripple far beyond its moment. Because every injustice, however quiet, was a mirror, and every choice to act, however small, was a beginning. Later that night, as she walked back through the empty lobby, Ava's phone buzzed once more. A message from Marcus. You just made the evening news. In a good way. Claire's office confirmed the investigation. Ava stopped near the elevator, her reflection stretching in the polished floor. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "I didn't plan for this," she whispered. Marcus replied, "You never do. That's what makes it real." Ava looked out toward the rain-soaked street. The city lights blurred against the window, golden and trembling. Maybe he was right. Maybe real change never came from planning, only from presence. And maybe tomorrow, she thought, she'd take another flight. But next time, she wouldn't just carry her suitcase and her laptop. She'd carry this truth with her, that even silence, when it breaks, can echo far beyond a cabin door. The morning light over Manhattan was pale and reluctant, filtering through a thin veil of clouds. Inside her hotel room, Ava Robinson sat at the small desk by the window, coffee steaming beside her laptop. She wasn't scrolling through emails. She wasn't checking stock reports or meeting agendas. She was watching the flight recording again. Marcus had sent her a private copy. Security footage from Aerostar's onboard cabin cameras. 2 minutes and 47 seconds of quiet injustice. The video was grainy, black and white, but every detail was clear. Chloe Miller pouring champagne for every passenger in the front cabin. Her movements smooth, rehearsed. Then, when she reached seat 2O, the subtle shift, the way her smile flickered, the pause before she stepped past Ava without a word. Ava's face on screen stayed calm, unreadable, but she remembered exactly what she had felt in that moment. A mix of disappointment and calculation. Now, sitting alone in her suite, she pressed pause. The image froze on Chloe's turned shoulder. Ava stared at it for a long time. Then she opened a new document on her laptop and began to type. Incident Summary Flight 218, May 17th. Time of departure 8:43 Mo PST LAX to JFO. Seat 2A. Flight attendant Chloe Miller. Summary: denied champagne twice. Denied coffee once. Inconsistent service observed across cabin. Witness Ethan Cooper, Seat 2B. Action taken. Report filed with Aerostar CEO Claire Donovan, May 18th. Status under internal review. Her fingers moved with calm precision. She added timestamps, transcribed dialogue, cross-referenced the footage, not because she wanted revenge, but because truth mattered. Documentation was dignity on paper. She saved the file, labeled it 218 Case A, Robinson, and backed it up twice. A soft knock at the door broke her focus. Her assistant, Lena, stepped in, holding a tablet. "Morning, Miss E. Robinson." Claire Donovan confirmed the meeting at noon. She said she's looking forward to it. Ava nodded. "Thank you, Lena. How's the press? Quiet for now, but some reporters are sniffing around after your speech yesterday." Ava smiled faintly. They always do. She closed the laptop, straightened her blazer, and stood. "Let's get to the office early. I want a clear head before we meet." The headquarters of Aerostar Airlines in Manhattan was a glass tower that caught the morning sun like a mirror. Inside, the lobby gleamed polished marble floors, gold lettering, soft piano music humming under the sound of footsteps. As Ava and Lena approached the front desk, a young receptionist smiled nervously. "Ms. Robinson, Ms. Donovan is expecting you." The elevator ride to the 38th floor was silent. Ava watched the city shrink below as they rose. She thought of her father again, of all the times he told her to take notes, to write things down so the world can't say it didn't happen. He was right. The world had a short memory for pain. It didn't feel. When the doors opened, Claire Donovan was waiting. She extended her hand, her expression composed yet sincere. "Ms. Robinson, thank you for coming." Ava shook her hand. Thank you for reaching out. They entered a conference room bathed in daylight. A long table, 2 glasses of water, and a single folder waiting at the center. Claire gestured for Ava to sit. I watched the footage twice. Claire began. There's no doubt about what happened. It was disrespectful. It was unacceptable. And it reflects poorly on every one of us. Ava's gaze stayed steady. I appreciate your honesty. Claire took a breath. We've suspended Ms. Miller and opened a review of her supervisor's conduct. It seems there were previous complaints that were never escalated. So it's a pattern, Ava said quietly. Yes, and that's what concerns me most. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The city hummed faintly beyond the glass walls, cars moving like silver threads far below. Finally, Ava leaned forward. Claire, I'm not here to destroy anyone's career. But this isn't just about one attendant. It's about culture, behavior that becomes invisible until it embarrasses the company. Claire nodded slowly. You're right, and I want to fix it. But I'll be honest, internal training alone won't be enough. People forget after a week. Ava's voice softened, but her words cut clean. Then you need accountability. Real, measurable change. A system that makes fairness a habit, not a headline. Claire smiled faintly. Would you help us build that? Ava hesitated. I'm not an HR consultant. No, Claire said. But you are the kind of leader who understands both business and humanity. And if someone like you stands beside us, it will mean something. The offer hung between them, heavy but promising. Ava took a slow sip of water, thinking. Then she nodded. If we're doing this, we do it right. No slogans, no staged apologies. Agreed, Claire said. We'll start with the truth. By the time Ava stepped back onto the sidewalk, the sun had broken through the clouds. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. How did it go? She typed back. Better than expected. But it's just the beginning. She looked up at the blue stretch of sky above the skyscrapers. For the first time in 2 days, she felt her shoulders ease. The tension hadn't vanished. It had transformed into purpose. She walked slowly toward the waiting car, her heels tapping against the concrete like a metronome. New York moved around her fast, chaotic, alive. But Ava's pace was deliberate, every step measured. In the back seat, Lena handed her a folder. These are the press requests. Do you want to respond? Not yet, Ava said. Let them wonder for a while. Lena nodded, smiling. You always know when to wait. Ava looked out the window. Waiting isn't silence. It's strategy. That evening, back at the hotel, Ava opened her laptop once more. She began outlining what would become her proposal to Aerostar, a full initiative for cultural reform, training, and transparent accountability. She called it the Dignity Program. Her fingers moved steadily, the ideas flowing with clarity. Bias awareness audits, passenger equality checkpoints, anonymous feedback channels, regular reporting metrics. She knew it would take months, maybe years, to see real change. But progress didn't start with applause. It started with paper, with documentation, with one person who refused to forget. When she finally stopped typing, she sat back and looked at the city lights flickering through the window. Each one seemed like a promise, small, distant, but persistent. She thought again of Chloe Miller. Somewhere, that young woman was probably sitting in a small apartment, replaying her own choices, wondering how one flight could change everything. Ava hoped, quietly, that Chloe would learn something deeper than fear, that maybe she'd see the humanity she'd once ignored. Ava whispered to herself, as if speaking to both of them, "This isn't revenge. This is repair. Outside. Rain began again, soft, steady, cleansing. The sun had already set when Ava Robinson returned to her hotel suite. The city outside glowed in 1,000 shades of gold and silver, each window a small reminder that life moved forward, no matter who was watching. She placed her bag on the table and exhaled, the kind of long, quiet breath that came after too many meetings, too many polite words, and too few real ones. Her laptop was still open from the night before, the file titled The Dignity Program waiting for her. She sat, poured a glass of water, and read through what she'd written. Every word felt like a step forward. But something inside her knew the story wasn't finished. Real change never came that easily. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Shaw. Heard from Claire. She's presenting your proposal to the board next week. You might want to fly in for it, Ava typed back. I'll be there. And Marcus. Thank you. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the quiet settle. The memory of that flight, the tray, the glass, the silence still hovered like a shadow. She couldn't shake. She thought she was past it. But memory had a way of replaying the things we never really resolved. 2 weeks later, she was back at Los Angeles International Airport. Same airline, same terminal, different flight. Ava had debated whether to book with Aerostar again. She could have chosen any other airline, any private charter, but she wanted to see for herself if anything had changed. At the check-in counter, the agent smiled. Good morning, Ms. Robinson. Welcome back to Aerostar. Good morning, Ava said warmly. It's good to be back. The woman glanced at her screen, then back at Ava. You're in seat 2A again. Ava smiled, a hint of irony flickering behind her calm eyes. Perfect. Inside the cabin. Everything looked the same. The polished seats, the muted colors, the scent of leather and citrus. But the atmosphere felt lighter somehow. The crew moved with a practiced professionalism that seemed genuine, not forced. Ava placed her briefcase under the seat, adjusted her scarf, and opened a book she knew she wouldn't read. As passengers boarded, she glanced at the attendants moving through the aisle. None of them looked familiar except for one. A flash of recognition. A young woman with dark hair pulled tightly back, voice soft but steady. Chloe Miller. Ava's eyes followed her for a moment, calm but curious. Chloe didn't notice her at first. She was focused, polite, almost mechanical in her movements. When she finally looked up, her expression faltered. Their eyes met. Ava smiled faintly. Good morning. Chloe's voice caught for half a second. Good morning, Ms. Robinson. It wasn't fear in her tone, more like humility, or maybe understanding. Ava nodded once, then returned to her book. As the plane taxied, the tension between them hung invisible but alive. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Chloe moved through her pre-flight checks, her professionalism intact, but her focus slightly unsteady. When the seatbelt sign went off, she approached Ava's row, tray in hand. Would you like a drink before takeoff, Ms. Robinson? Ava looked up. Yes. Champagne. Please. Chloe poured it carefully, her hands steady. She placed the glass down with quiet precision. Ava lifted it slowly. Thank you. Chloe nodded, then walked away. For a moment, Ava thought that was the end of it, the closing of a circle. But then, she noticed something out of the corner of her eye. A passenger 2 rows back, a man in his 50s, waved for attention. When Chloe turned toward him, her tone changed, warm, effusive. She laughed at something he said. Ava watched as Chloe poured him another drink, then lingered to chat. It wasn't unprofessional, but it was familiar. That same invisible line, that subtle shift in tone that said everything without saying a word. Ava's heart tightened. She told herself not to overthink, not to see ghosts where there might be none. But when Chloe passed her row again, offering refills to others, she didn't glance in Ava's direction. Once could be coincidence. Twice was habit. Ava set her glass down, untouched. Across the aisle, an older woman noticed the exchange. She leaned slightly toward Ava. "Honey, are they ignoring you again?" Ava gave a polite smile. "I'm sure it's just an oversight." The woman frowned. "Doesn't look like one to me." Ava turned toward the window. The clouds outside were a quiet, endless gray. She could hear her father's voice again. "The world tests you twice. First to see if you'll react, then to see if you'll rise." She exhaled slowly, reached for her phone, and opened the Notes app once more. Flight 223, Aerostar Airlines, date June 3rd, 9th, 12:00 Mull, PST seat 2A. Attendant Chloe Miller. Incident service inconsistency observed. Potential repeat behavior. Her thumb hovered for a moment before she added one more line. Observation, intent unclear, tone improved, awareness present. Then she locked the phone and leaned back. She wasn't angry this time. She was curious. After landing in Chicago, Ava waited until the cabin emptied. She gathered her things, took a final glance at Chloe, and said quietly, "You've improved." Chloe blinked, unsure how to respond. "I'm trying." "I know," Ava said. "Keep trying." She smiled once, gently, then left the plane. Outside, the air was warm, the terminal buzzing with travelers. Ava's driver held a sign with her name, but she paused before walking over. She stood for a moment, watching people move, families rushing, business travelers typing as they walked, a janitor wiping down handrails. She thought about how easily people could disappear into routine, how quickly kindness could be replaced by comfort. She took out her phone again and opened a new message to Claire Donovan. Observed partial improvement in crew conduct. Suggest more hands-on training for behavioral awareness. Happy to debrief in person. She hit send, then slid the phone into her pocket. That evening, at the conference center, Ava stood on stage beneath soft lights, speaking to a crowd of executives and industry leaders. Her topic wasn't technology this time. It was leadership. She spoke of culture, of responsibility, of what she called the invisible rules we live by. People rarely remember what we say. She told them. They remember how we made them feel. And sometimes, the smallest actions, who you greet first, who you overlook, say more about your values than any mission statement ever could. The room was silent, every word landing with quiet precision. Ava paused, letting the stillness hold. Then she smiled. The truth is, dignity doesn't demand perfection, it demands awareness. Applause rose, not loud, but genuine. Later, back in her hotel, she received a reply from Claire. "Thank you, Ava. We're expanding the Dignity program next quarter, and Chloe Miller volunteered to lead one of the sessions." Ava stared at the screen, surprised. Then she smiled. Maybe the second denial wasn't a setback. Maybe it was proof that change takes more than a policy. It takes repetition, reflection, time. She stood by the window, watching the lights flicker across the skyline. Her reflection in the glass looked calmer than before. Her father's words echoed one more time. Dignity stays. And this time, she believed it. The hotel room was quiet, except for the faint hum of city traffic below. It was late. The kind of hour when thoughts get heavier and the world feels too still. Ava Robinson stood by the window, her reflection framed against the lights of Chicago. Her phone lay on the table behind her, screen glowing with a single name, Marcus Shaw. She had just finished reviewing the agenda for the Aerostar board presentation. Claire Donovan had confirmed her proposal would be the final topic. It should have felt like progress. It did, mostly. But something inside her wouldn't rest. That morning's flight still lingered in her mind, the small flicker of hesitation in Chloe Miller's eyes, the echo of that old, subtle divide. It hadn't been hostility this time, but the shadow of habit. Ava picked up the phone. She hesitated for a breath before tapping call. Marcus answered almost immediately. I was just about to call you. You read my mind. I couldn't sleep, Ava said, her tone even but low. I figured, you've been turning this thing over in your head all night, haven't you? Ava smiled faintly. You know me too well. Marcus's voice softened. Talk to me. Ava, what happened this time? Ava looked out at the skyline, her voice calm. It wasn't bad, not like before, but it wasn't fixed either. The attitude's better, but the awareness is not consistent. You think it's the same attendant? Yes. Chloe Miller. She's trying. I can tell, but she still moves differently around me. There's this caution, or maybe guilt. It's not racism anymore. It's fear. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's progress, though. Fear means she's aware. Awareness means you got through. Ava sighed. Maybe. But fear doesn't change culture. It freezes it. She moved away from the window, pacing slowly. I don't want people to serve out of fear. I want them to see, to recognize each person equally, not just the ones who look like them or fit into their comfort zone. That's a tall order, Marcus said. Maybe. But it's the only one that matters. She sat down on the edge of the bed, elbows on her knees, phone pressed to her ear. The rain outside had started again, soft and rhythmic, like a quiet metronome. Do you know why I called you that day? Marcus, she asked suddenly. He chuckled. Because you knew I could fix it? No, Ava said. Because I knew you'd listen before you fixed it. The line went silent for a moment. Then Marcus said, That's the part people forget, isn't it? They skip straight to the fix. No listening, no learning. Ava nodded to herself. Exactly. And that's how we keep circling back to the same mistakes. Her voice softened, thoughtful. My father used to tell me, every storm sounds different when you stop yelling at it and start listening to the rain. I didn't understand it back then, but I do now. Marcus smiled on the other end. You always bring up your father when things get real. He taught me everything that matters, Ava said quietly. He used to drive that bus through downtown Atlanta for 30 years. He said the hardest part wasn't the long hours. It was the way people looked right past him, like he wasn't there. He said the worst kind of hurt is to be invisible. She paused, her throat tightening slightly. I've spent my whole life refusing to be invisible. Marcus, but now I want to make sure no one else is either. You already are, Marcus said. You've started something that's moving faster than you think. Claire called me this morning. The board's reviewing a new inclusion metric based on your model. You're making real waves. Ava smiled, but her voice carried a trace of disbelief. I didn't want waves. I wanted calm water. Steady. Fair. Honest. Marcus laughed softly. You don't calm water by asking it to behave. You calm it by changing the wind. The call stretched on for nearly an hour. They talked about numbers, about timelines, but mostly about meaning the kind of quiet, reflective conversation that happens only between people who've seen too much to be naive. At one point, Marcus asked, "You ever think about why it had to be you? Why this happened to you? Of all people?" Ava took a deep breath. "Because I wouldn't explode. Because I'd handle it with precision instead of noise. That's what people like me do. We make injustice too neat to ignore. You think that's fair? No, but it's effective." The rain outside grew heavier. Ava turned off the lamp beside her, letting the room fall into a soft half-light. "Do you ever get tired?" "Marcus, all the time," he said. "But then I remember who's watching. My daughters, my team, people who think justice is someone else's job." Ava smiled faintly. "Then maybe we're the same kind of tired." When the call finally ended, Ava stayed sitting in the dark. The city lights blinked faintly through the curtains, gold on gray. She opened her laptop again, the blue glow spilling over her face. A new email had arrived, this one from Claire Donovan. "Ava, quick update. Board meeting confirmed for Friday. Also, we've received feedback from several crew members about the Dignity program. Most responses are positive, though some expressed fear about doing the wrong thing. Your phrase about awareness versus fear struck a chord. Would you consider addressing the leadership team yourself?" Ava read the message twice. Her reflection in the laptop screen looked steady, but her pulse quickened. She had wanted progress. Now she had responsibility. She began to type her reply slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Claire, I'll be there. Let's make it honest. No scripts, no PR lines, just people talking to people. That's how change starts." She hit send and leaned back. The rain outside began to fade into silence. The next morning came quietly. Ava rose early, walked through the park near the hotel, and watched the city wake up. A street vendor poured coffee into paper cups. A child ran toward a puddle, laughing. For a brief moment, everything felt simple again. As she watched the morning unfold, she thought about the people she'd met along the way. Ethan Cooper, who had spoken up when he didn't have to. Chloe Miller, learning to see herself through someone else's eyes. Claire, fighting to fix a system that wasn't built to change easily. It struck Ava that the story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to all of them. She took out her phone and scrolled back to the photo she had taken that first day on Flight 218, the untouched glass of champagne sitting alone on the tray table. She looked at it for a long time before whispering softly to herself. "It started here." Then she smiled. "But it won't end here." She slid the phone back into her pocket and started walking again, her pace steady, her gaze forward. The wind was cool against her face. Somewhere in the distance, a plane climbed into the sky, its engines humming like a quiet promise. And Ava Robinson, calm and unshaken, kept walking toward what came next. The boardroom at Aerostar's Manhattan headquarters was colder than usual that morning. The glass walls glistened under soft light, reflecting the skyline like a mirror of steel and ambition. At the head of the long table, Claire Donovan stood waiting. Around her, executives murmured in low tones, clutching tablets and paper cups. The company's logo shimmered behind her, clean, elegant, distant. Then the doors opened. Ava Robinson stepped in. She wasn't dressed like a guest. She walked with the calm of someone who belonged there, in every space she entered. Her black suit was simple, sharp, her hair pulled back neatly. The room fell quiet. Claire smiled. "Ava, thank you for coming." Ava nodded, setting her bag down. "Thank you for having me." The room shifted. every eye turning toward her as she took a seat near the center. "We've reviewed the latest data from the Dignity program," Claire began, her tone measured but hopeful. "Employee engagement is up 22%. Customer satisfaction has improved by 11. But," she paused, glancing at the papers in front of her, "there's also been resistance. A few employees feel the program creates tension where there wasn't any before." Ava's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Change always makes people uncomfortable, especially when it asks them to look in the mirror. One of the executives, a gray-haired man named David Lang, cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Ms. Robinson, we're in the airline business, not social reform. We move people, not politics." The words hung in the air like frost. Ava turned her gaze toward him, calm and steady. "You move people," she repeated. "Exactly. People of every color, every class, every story. That is social reform. Mr. Long, you just happened to do it at 30,000 feet. The room went still. Claire's eyes flickered with something between pride and admiration. Ava leaned forward slightly. "Let me tell you something about movement. It's not just travel. It's transformation. Every person who steps on one of your planes should feel seen, safe, respected. Not because it's policy, but because it's principle." David Lang looked down. No one else spoke. After the meeting, Ava stood by the window overlooking the city. Claire joined her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You didn't hold back," Claire said. Ava smiled. "You didn't ask me here to be polite." Claire nodded, then handed her a cup. "You know, when we first started this program, I thought it would be a checkbox something to satisfy investors, quiet the press, but now it feels bigger than the company." "It is," Ava said softly, "because it's about what kind of world we want to build inside these walls." Claire exhaled, watching the morning light stretch across the city. "Do you ever worry it's too late to change people?" Ava took a sip of coffee before answering. "People don't change because we tell them to. They change because something finally reaches them where pride can't block it." Claire turned to her. "And what reaches them?" Ava looked out at the skyline, eyes distant, truth, and stories that refused to die quietly. That afternoon, Ava met Marcus Shaw at a small cafe downtown. The place was crowded, alive with the sound of espresso machines and conversation. Marcus waved from the back corner, his grin familiar and grounding. He stood as she approached. "You just finished a revolution, didn't you?" Ava laughed. "Just another meeting." He leaned forward. "Word's spreading fast. Journalists are calling it the Robinson effect." Ava raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dramatic." "It is," Marcus said, "but it's real. Other companies are reaching out to Aerostar asking about the program. One hospital group in Atlanta, a bank in Chicago they all want in." Ava set down her cup slowly. "That's not supposed to happen this fast. Change never happens slow when people finally see the truth," Marcus said. "You didn't just file a complaint. Ava, you built a blueprint." She smiled faintly. "Funny thing about blueprints. They look simple on paper, but building them, that's where the pain lives." Marcus nodded. "And you've always known how to work through pain." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed around them, the sound of footsteps and ambition merging into one steady pulse. Ava's phone buzzed on the table. A new message. She glanced at it and froze. From Chloe Miller. "Ms. Robinson, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I've been asked to lead one of the new training sessions next month. I wanted to thank you for how you handled everything. I didn't deserve that much grace." Ava stared at the words for a long time. Her throat tightened, and her eyes softened with something that felt like relief. She typed back slowly. Grace isn't about deserving. It's about direction. I'm proud of you. Keep going. She hit send, then looked up at Marcus, her smile quiet but full. What happened? He asked. She reached out. Marcus grinned. The flight attendant Ava nodded. She's leading the next session. Marcus leaned back, shaking his head. You see that? That's the domino effect. You start with one act of dignity, and before you know it, the whole structure starts to move. Ava laughed softly. You make it sound poetic. It is poetic, Marcus said. It's the kind of poetry the world needs right now. That evening, Ava returned to her hotel. She sat on the balcony, looking out over the city as the sky turned from gold to deep indigo. The air smelled like rain again. She opened her laptop and began to type, not for work this time, but for herself. Reflections. June 14th. Change doesn't start when we speak louder. It starts when we choose to stay calm long enough to be heard. It doesn't come from anger, though anger lights the fuse. It comes from intention measured, patient, and relentless. One woman denied a glass of champagne shouldn't matter, but maybe it does, because that one small moment holds every unspoken story of every person who's ever been told they don't belong. Dignity isn't what people give us. It's what we refuse to lose. She stopped typing, her eyes moist with emotion she didn't try to hide. For the first time since that flight, she felt peace, not because the world was fixed, but because something within her had shifted. The rain began again, light and steady. She whispered softly, You were right. Daddy, dignity stays. A small smile formed as she looked out over the skyline. She didn't see success, or headlines, or applause. She saw people, real people, trying, stumbling, growing, and that was enough. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the city glistening under a soft silver sky. From the balcony of her apartment, Ava Robinson watched the sun break through a thin layer of clouds. The light felt different, gentler, warmer, as if the world itself had taken a breath. It had been 3 months since the incident on Flight 218. 3 months since that quiet humiliation had turned into a movement. The Dignity program was no longer a memo tucked inside Aerostar's system. It had spread beyond the company. Airlines, banks, and corporate offices across the country had begun reaching out, asking to adapt it. Ava never sought the spotlight, but it found her anyway. Her name had become a symbol whispered in conference rooms and written across headlines. Ava Robinson, the CEO who redefined grace. Still, she didn't see herself as a symbol. She saw herself as a woman who'd had enough, who'd chosen to turn restraint into revolution. Her phone buzzed. It was Claire Donovan. Good morning, Claire, Ava answered, smiling. I hope I didn't wake you, Claire said, her voice bright and energized. I wanted to share something. You'll love this. Ava leaned on the balcony rail. Go ahead. We just got our quarterly survey results. The Dignity program has become the top-rated internal initiative at Aerostar. 91% of our employees say they feel more seen and respected at work. 91. Ava smiled softly. That's beautiful. And get this, Chloe Miller's session recordings are going viral on our internal network. She's talking about empathy, accountability, even forgiveness. The crew loves her. Ava closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words settle. She found her voice. She said quietly, She did. Claire said, Because you let her. Ava's tone was calm but full. No, because she chose to use it. Later that morning, Ava met Marcus Shaw for brunch at a small place near Central Park. The air smelled like cinnamon and rain, and the chatter of late breakfast diners filled the space. Marcus waved her over, grinning. "You're officially a celebrity." You know that Ava sat down, rolling her eyes. "Don't start." "I mean it," Marcus said. "CNN just ran a segment on you. From injustice to integrity, how one CEO changed corporate America. They called you the calm before the storm." Ava laughed softly. "The calm before the storm? That sounds ominous." Marcus chuckled. "No, it sounds right. You didn't yell. You didn't threaten. You just stood there, calm and steady, until the system had to look at itself." Ava stirred her coffee slowly. "Funny how people call you powerful once you've survived being powerless." Marcus leaned back, nodding. "That's the truth. Ova, you made power look like peace. After brunch." Ova walked through Central Park. The leaves shimmered from the earlier rain, sunlight slipping between branches like gold threads. As she walked, she noticed two young women sitting on a bench nearby, both wearing Aerostar uniforms. They were talking quietly, unaware of her presence. One of them said, "Did you watch Chloe's new training video? She was amazing. I didn't realize how blind I'd been about some of the little things we do." The other nodded. "I know. Like, not just race stuff, but the way we treat people based on how they dress, how they talk. It makes you think." The first woman smiled. "You think that lady who started it, what's her name again, Ava?" "Something Ava Robinson," her friend replied. "Yeah, I think she changed everything." Ava smiled to herself and kept walking, her heart full in a way she hadn't expected. That evening, she sat in her office overlooking the city. The sky had turned to deep indigo again, lights glowing like fireflies across the skyline. She was reviewing proposals for expanding the Dignity program to other industries when her assistant, Lena, entered. "Miss Robinson, there's someone here to see you," Lena said. She didn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Ava raised an eyebrow. "Who is it?" Lena smiled. "Chloe Miller." Ava stood slowly. "Send her in." A moment later, Chloe entered the room, nervous but composed. She looked different, more grounded, more certain. The same woman who had once looked past Ava now looked directly into her eyes. "Ms. Robinson," Chloe said softly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Ava gestured toward a chair. "Not at all. Sit." Chloe hesitated before sitting. "I just wanted to thank you. I've been meaning to do it in person." Ava folded her hands on the desk. "You already did. Through your work." Chloe shook her head. "No, not like this. The day on the plane I thought I was just doing my job. I didn't realize how small I'd made someone else feel. And when you didn't yell, when you didn't call me out in front of everyone, that's what changed me. You gave me space to see myself clearly." Ava's voice was soft. Sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. Chloe smiled through tears. "You were right. Dignity stays. I say it to myself before every flight now." Ava felt a warmth rise in her chest. "I'm proud of you, Chloe." They stood, and for a moment, the two women just looked at each other, one who had hurt, one who had healed, and both who had learned. Then Chloe said, "You know, I think about that champagne sometimes." Ava laughed gently. "I bet you do." "Next time you fly with us," Chloe said, "I'm pouring the first class for you." Ava smiled. "Then I'll hold you to it." After Chloe left, Ava returned to her desk. She didn't open her laptop right away. She just sat there, watching the skyline again. For the first time, the city didn't feel heavy. It felt alive with possibility. Her father's words echoed again, not from memory this time, but from understanding. Dignity isn't what they give you. It's what you keep. And now, she thought, it's what you pass on. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a message from Claire Donovan Ava. The Dignity Program is officially being adopted by 3 new corporations this month. They want you to speak at the United Nations Business Summit. Are you ready to go? Global Ava looked at the message and smiled. She typed one word back, always. Then she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the hum of the city fill the silence. She thought of the girl she had been, the woman she had become, and the people she had met along the way. A denial had started it, but a choice had changed it. Because change never really begins with anger. It begins with awareness. And awareness, once born, has a way of echoing through the world, one heart at a time. The morning headlines hit before Ava Robinson had finished her first cup of coffee. Her phone buzzed with one notification after another: news alerts, emails, calls waiting. CEO who sparked airline reform faces industry criticism. Is the Dignity Program going too far? Anonymous sources claim employee discomfort with forced awareness. Ava set her mug down and stared at the screen. The rhythm of success, it seemed, always came with noise. The door opened, and Lena stepped in, tablet in hand. "I'm sorry to bother you so early," she said softly, "but it's everywhere. Talk shows, blogs, Twitter. Some executives are saying the program's creating division among staff." Ava took a breath, slow and steady. "Of course they are." Lena hesitated. "What do you want to do?" Ava stood, walking toward the window. The city outside was bright and clean, pretending it had never known rain. "We listen," she said, "then we speak." 2 hours later, she sat in a conference room at Aerostar headquarters beside Claire Donovan. The mood was tense. Screens flashed data points, headlines, social media excerpts. Claire rubbed her temples. "They're saying morale's down in a few divisions. Some employees feel they're walking on eggshells, afraid of saying the wrong thing." Ava leaned back in her chair. "Fear is a phase, not a failure. It means they're learning. No one changes behavior without discomfort." Across the table, David Lang spoke again, his tone sharp. "Ms. Robinson, with respect. That's easy to say when you're not managing the fallout. We've lost 3 flight attendants who said they don't feel comfortable working under constant scrutiny." Ava's gaze didn't waver. "And how many passengers have said they feel safer, more respected, more seen?" David blinked. "I don't have that number." "I do," Ava said, her voice calm but firm. 91%. You know what that means. It means the program is working. But the ones who resist, they're the proof we needed it." The room went silent. Even Claire looked momentarily stunned. Then, quietly, she smiled. "She's right. After the meeting." Claire followed Ava into the hallway. "You handled that beautifully," she said. Ava smiled faintly. "I've been handling men like David my whole career." Claire chuckled, shaking her head. "He'll come around. They always do when the numbers keep climbing." Ava's smile faded. "It's not the numbers that worry me, Claire. It's the noise. The moment something challenges comfort, people start shouting about fairness. They confuse equality with loss." Claire nodded slowly. "You're saying they see inclusion as subtraction." "Exactly," Ava said. "They think lifting someone else lowers them. They've never been taught that equity multiplies, not divides." Claire looked at her for a long moment. You ever get tired of being the one who has to teach that lesson? Ava's voice softened. Every day. But I do it anyway. Later that night, Ava sat in her apartment, watching the news coverage replay her image over and over. Every network had a panel, some praising her, others dissecting her motives. A clip of a talking head filled the screen. This so-called dignity program might sound noble, but it's corporate overreach. Not everyone wants moral lessons at 30,000 feet. Ava muted the sound. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back calm, but tired. Her father's words whispered from memory. "Don't waste your strength proving what's already true," she whispered back. "I'm trying, Daddy, but they make it so loud." Her phone buzzed again. Marcus Shaw. She answered, voice low. "You watching this circus too?" "Of course I am," Marcus said. "You're trending, but not all of it's bad." Ava laughed quietly. "That's the new measure of success, isn't it? Not all of it's bad." "You knew backlash was coming," Marcus said gently. "You shook the table. People don't thank you for that right away." "I know," Ava said. "But still, it hurts to watch people twist something so simple. Respect shouldn't be controversial." Marcus paused. "You ever notice how every revolution gets called divisive right before it becomes obvious?" Ava smiled faintly. "You always know what to say." "It's not about knowing," Marcus said. "It's about remembering. You started this from truth, and truth doesn't need defending, it needs repeating." She let that sink in. "Then I'll repeat it louder." The next morning, she walked into a live studio interview. The lights were bright, the cameras already rolling. The host greeted her with a polished smile. "Ms. Robinson, thank you for joining us. You've become the face of a nationwide debate. How do you respond to those who say the Dignity program is creating tension instead of unity?" Ava smiled, her posture calm but unwavering. Growth is uncomfortable, always has been. When people say they feel tension, what they really mean is they're finally aware of the imbalance that's been there all along. The host nodded, intrigued. "So you don't think the criticism is valid?" "I think it's proof we're doing something real," Ava said. "Comfort never changed anything. Awareness did." The host leaned forward. "And what about those who say you've politicized the workplace?" Ava's tone didn't change. If fairness feels political, then the problem isn't the message, it's the mirror. For a moment, even the host was silent. When the segment aired, it exploded online. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Some praised her, others mocked her, but no one ignored her. That night, Ava sat alone on her balcony again. The city lights flickered like stars that refused to fade. She had learned to live in this tension, the space between being admired and being misunderstood. She poured herself a small glass of champagne, the same drink she had once been denied. She lifted it toward the skyline, whispering softly, "To dignity." Her phone buzzed with a message from Chloe Miller. "Mrs. Robinson, I saw your interview. You made us proud today." Some of the crew cried watching it. "Thank you for standing your ground," Ava typed back. "You keep doing the same. That's how this lasts." She set the phone down, leaning back into the quiet. This was what change felt like, not a victory parade, but the steady rhythm of resistance and resolve. Not everyone would understand her. Not everyone needed to. Because progress wasn't about winning the crowd. It was about staying the course when the applause faded. Ava closed her eyes, letting the night air brush against her face. She thought about her father again, about that bus he drove for decades. He used to say, "The route never changes, but the faces do." So keep showing up. And that was exactly what she would do. The city looked restless that morning. Gray clouds rolled over Manhattan like waves, and the air felt heavy, full of static. Ava Robinson sat at the corner of her office, her fingers wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. Her eyes were fixed on the email glowing across her laptop screen. Subject board review. Immediate action required. The message was short, sharp, and sterile. The Aerostar board had called for an emergency session. Public pressure had reached a boiling point. Some investors were demanding a pause on the Dignity program until further notice. Ava read it 3 times before closing the laptop. Her reflection in the dark screen looked calm, but she could feel the pulse in her throat. Lena knocked softly before entering. "Ms. Robinson, you saw it." "Right, I did. They want you in the meeting at 10. Ava nodded. "Tell Marcus I'll need him there." Lena hesitated. "You think they're going to shut it down?" Ava stood, adjusting her blazer. "No, but they might try." The boardroom was already full when she arrived. Claire Donovan sat at the head of the table, face pale but composed. The energy was different today, tighter, colder. Around the table, a few of the same executives who once smiled at Ava now avoided her eyes. "Thank you for joining, Ms. Robinson," Claire began, her tone heavy. "You've been instrumental in shaping this initiative, and I wanted you here as we discuss the situation." David Lang spoke first. As expected. "The media storm isn't slowing down. Our investors are nervous. They're asking if Aerostar has become more focused on politics than profit." Ava met his gaze. "You can't measure integrity in quarterly revenue." "David, but in the long run, it's the only thing that sustains profit." David's jaw tightened. "We're losing staff morale, losing shareholders. We're losing the people who resist accountability." Ava interrupted. "That's not a loss. That's filtration." A few board members exchanged uneasy glances. Claire lifted a hand, steadying the room. "Let's stay constructive. The question isn't whether the program has value. It's how we protect it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then a woman named Rachel Ong, one of the younger executives, leaned forward. "With respect, maybe we don't protect it. Maybe we evolve it. The problem isn't the Dignity program. It's the narrative. It's tied to Ava personally. And when people see one face, they find one target." The room murmured in agreement. Claire looked at Ava carefully. "They're suggesting we shift public leadership of the initiative. Put it under corporate communications. Create distance between you and the program. At least for now." Ava sat perfectly still. "You mean silence me?" "No," Claire said quietly. "We mean protect you." Ava leaned back in her chair. "I don't need protection. Claire, I need progress." When the meeting ended, Ava stayed behind as the room emptied. Marcus lingered near the doorway, hands in his pockets. "They're scared," he said. "I know," Ava replied, "but fear doesn't justify retreat." He watched her for a moment. "You knew this would come, didn't you? Every system fights back before it changes." Ava sighed, looking out at the rain streaking down the windows. Knowing doesn't make it easier. Marcus took a step closer. "What are you going to do?" Ava turned to him, voice steady. "What I always do. Tell the truth." That night, Ava sat at her desk alone, typing. The rain outside had turned into a steady rhythm, the kind that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. She opened a blank document and began to write an open letter. Not to the board, not to the press, but to the people, the employees, the passengers, the unseen faces that had carried her through every moment of this journey. To those who still believe in dignity, the loudest voices will always tell you to slow down. They'll say your standards are too high, your hope too naive. But that's how progress sounds, before it's accepted. When I started this, I didn't want attention. I wanted fairness. I wanted the next woman, the next child, the next man of color to be seen as fully human before they had to prove they were. If the cost of that is backlash, then it's a price I'll pay twice. Because dignity is not a program, it's a promise. She read the words out loud once, her voice quiet but sure. Then she hit post. Within an hour, the letter began spreading online. Comments poured in, some furious, some inspired, many deeply moved. By midnight, it was everywhere. The next morning, her office phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, board members, supporters, critics. Lena stepped in, holding a printed email. It's from Claire. Ava took it and began reading. Ava, I won't lie. The board is furious, but something's happening. Your letters reached over 5 million views overnight. Thousands of employees are posting their own stories under the hashtag Yebo Dignity Stays. I think the tide is turning again. Ava set the paper down slowly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled small, tired, but real. It always does. That evening, Claire called. They want to meet again tomorrow, Claire said, her voice steady but lighter now. This time, not to suspend the program. They want to expand it. Ava leaned back in her chair, relief washing through her. What changed? Claire laughed softly. People did. Your letter reminded them why this mattered. Ava's eyes softened. Then it wasn't me. It was them all along. Later, when Marcus came by her apartment, he found her sitting on the balcony with a blanket over her shoulders, looking out over the skyline. Thought you'd be celebrating, he said. Ava smiled. I am. Just quietly. He joined her, sitting beside her with 2 cups of tea. You really did it, Ava. You turned a moment of pain into a movement. Ava shook her head gently. No, the movement was always there. I just gave it a voice. Marcus raised his cup toward her, to voices that refused to fade. Ava lifted hers in return, to people who choose to listen. They clinked their cups softly. The city lights shimmered around them, the hum of traffic blending with the whisper of wind. Ava looked out at the horizon, her heart calm. The fight wasn't over, it never would be. But for the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of the noise, because noise meant people were awake. And that, she thought, was how change always began, with one voice breaking the silence, and another choosing to echo it. The morning sun cut through the clouds as the black car pulled into JFK Airport. Ava Robinson stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement. She stood for a moment, breathing in the sharp air, her gaze lifting toward the glass facade of the terminal. It felt almost poetic, being here again at the same place where everything had begun. The airport was a strange kind of mirror for her life. Every arrival was a beginning, every departure a reckoning. Her flight today wasn't for business. It wasn't for meetings or interviews or boardrooms. It was simply time to go home. Atlanta. The place where her father had raised her to believe that dignity was not something you earned, it was something you already had. Inside the terminal, a few travelers recognized her. Some approached shyly, offering words of gratitude. Others simply smiled, a quiet nod of acknowledgement. One woman stopped her near the gate, a flight attendant in her early 20s with bright, determined eyes. Miss Robinson, she said, voice trembling a little. I just wanted to thank you. Because of you. I applied for the new leadership training. I never thought I could. Ava smiled warmly. Of course you can. The only limits that matter are the ones you accept. The woman's eyes glistened. You've changed so many lives. Ava shook her head softly. No, dear. I reminded people they had the power to change their own. As the young woman walked away, Ava felt a familiar ache of gratitude deep in her chest. The echoes of her father's words were never far. Plant seeds, baby. You may not see them grow, but they'll feed someone someday, she whispered under her breath. They're growing. Daddy. The gate attendant scanned her ticket. Welcome aboard, Ms. Robinson. We're honored to have you flying with us again. Ava nodded politely and stepped down the jet bridge. The hum of engines vibrated faintly through the floor, the air carrying that metallic tang of jet fuel and anticipation. When she entered the cabin, her steps slowed. There was something familiar about the setup. Soft lighting, the quiet murmur of passengers settling in. Seat 2A. She smiled. The same seat as before. As she placed her bag beneath the seat, a voice spoke gently beside her. Ms. Robinson. She looked up. A flight attendant stood there, smiling nervously. Her name tag read Chloe Miller. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. Good morning, Chloe, Ava said, her tone calm but kind. Chloe's smile widened. Genuine this time. I didn't expect you on my flight today. Life has a sense of humor, Ava replied. Chloe laughed softly. Well, I'm honored, and I promise. We have plenty of champagne this time. Ava chuckled. That's good to know. As Chloe moved through the aisle, greeting other passengers, Ava watched her carefully. There was no trace of the woman she'd met months ago. The stiffness was gone. Her tone was warm, her energy confident. Change, Ava thought, was rarely loud. It was this, a quiet shift, a gentler rhythm. The plane lifted off into the sky, leaving New York behind in a blur of silver and blue. Ava leaned back, eyes half closed, letting the hum of the engines lull her. Midway through the flight, Chloe approached with a tray. Champagne, she asked. Ava smiled, accepting the glass. Thank you. Chloe hesitated before speaking again. Can I tell you something? Of course. When you first spoke to me that day, I went home thinking you hated me. But the truth is, you were the first person who ever made me see how much I didn't see. She paused, eyes glistening. I joined the program. Ava, I teach new hires now. About respect, empathy, and the things people don't talk about. And every time I start a session, I tell them this. Once, I almost let my uniform become armor. Then someone taught me that dignity isn't about who serves and who's served. It's about how we treat each other in between. Ava's chest tightened. That's beautiful. Chloe. Chloe smiled, voice trembling. It's because of you. Ava reached out, gently touching her hand. No, Chloe. It's because of who you decided to become. The rest of the flight was peaceful. Clouds stretched like soft blankets below, sunlight scattering across their edges. Ava opened her notebook, jotting a few lines as the world drifted by beneath her. Every act of courage starts small. A look, a word, a refusal to stay silent. We never know who's watching, but someone always is. As she closed the notebook, the intercom chimed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing in Atlanta shortly. Please fasten your seatbelts. The words washed over her like a quiet benediction. Atlanta, home. When the plane touched down, the cabin erupted in soft applause. Chloe smiled as she stood near the exit. "Thank you for flying with us, Ms. Robinson." Ava stood, lifting her bag. "Thank you. Chloe, you're doing good work." As she stepped into the jet bridge, Chloe called out, "Ms. Robinson." Ava turned. "Next time you fly," Chloe said, "your drink's on me." Ava laughed. "I'll hold you to that." Then she walked away, the sound of her footsteps fading into the hum of the terminal. Outside, Atlanta's air wrapped around her like an old song, warm, humid, full of memory. A black sedan waited at the curb. As she settled inside, the driver turned and smiled. "Ms. Robinson, welcome home." Ava looked out the window as the car pulled away. The streets were familiar, the old brick buildings, the magnolia trees, the rhythm of a city she had never really left. When they passed her father's old neighborhood, she asked the driver to stop. She stepped out and walked down the quiet street. The bus depot still stood on the corner, faded but sturdy. She walked toward it, heart swelling with nostalgia. The bench where her father used to sit on breaks was still there. She sat down, tracing her hand along the worn metal. In the distance, a bus rumbled by, brakes sighing, passengers boarding one by one. She could almost see him there again, his cap tilted back, smile patient, eyes full of quiet wisdom. Ava whispered, "I kept my promise. Daddy." The wind stirred gently, rustling the leaves. It felt like an answer. Back in her hotel that evening, she sat by the window, pen in hand, writing a letter she'd never send. "Dear Daddy, today I flew home. Same airline, same seat. But the world felt different this time. I met the woman who once denied me a glass of champagne. She poured it with grace, and this time I accepted it with forgiveness. You taught me that dignity isn't a reaction, it's a choice. I understand that now, and I finally know what you meant when you said, 'Plant seeds. They're growing everywhere.'" She folded the paper carefully and placed it inside her notebook. The city lights shimmered outside her window, and somewhere far above, a plane crossed the night sky, steady, graceful, unstoppable. Ava lifted her glass of champagne once more and whispered, "To you, Daddy, and to the people still learning how to see." Then she smiled, a soft, quiet smile that carried both peace and promise. The ballroom of the United Nations headquarters in New York shimmered under soft amber lights. Rows of flags lined the walls, and the air buzzed with a quiet, expectant hum. CEOs, diplomats, and journalists filled the room, their murmurs weaving into a low chorus of anticipation. At the front of the hall stood a podium, framed by the UN emblem. Behind it, a single name card read Ava Robinson, CEO, the Robinson Foundation for Human Dignity. Claire Donovan stood near the stage, dressed in a sleek navy suit. She caught Ava's eye and smiled a silent nod that said everything words couldn't. "You ready?" she whispered as Ava approached. Ava smiled softly. "I've been ready my whole life." The applause began before she even reached the podium. A wave of sound rolled through the room, respectful, admiring, heavy with meaning. She waited for it to settle, then spoke, her voice calm but resonant. "Good afternoon. When I was a little girl growing up in Atlanta, my father drove a city bus. Every morning before his shift, he'd shine his shoes, straighten his uniform, and say to me, 'Baby, dignity isn't what they give you. It's what you carry.'" A few people nodded, a few smiled. I didn't understand what that meant until years later, sitting in a first-class seat on a flight I'd worked my whole life to afford. I was denied a glass of champagne that day, not because there wasn't enough, but because someone decided I wasn't enough. The room went still. Cameras clicked softly. That moment hurt, but it also opened something in me. Because when you strip everything away, the success, the title, the privilege, what remains is the truth of how we see one another. She paused, letting the words breathe. And that truth has power. The screens behind her lit up with footage from Aerostar's Dignity Program crew members in training sessions, employees sharing their stories, Chloe Miller leading a discussion circle, Marcus Shaw speaking at a community event. When I first spoke out, I didn't want revenge. I wanted reflection. I wanted us to see that fairness isn't a luxury, it's a foundation. You can't build trust without it. She looked around the room, her eyes catching the faces of leaders from every corner of the world. Since that day, I've learned something profound. Change doesn't come from outrage alone. It comes from grace. The kind of grace that holds people accountable without discarding them. The kind that transforms apology into action. Applause rippled softly through the room. Ava continued, voice steady but full of warmth. I stand here today because of a flight attendant who found the courage to learn, a company that chose to listen, and a team that refused to let fear write the story. She turned slightly toward Claire in the audience, and because of friends who reminded me that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice, it's about being the clearest one. After the speech, reporters swarmed the hall. Cameras flashed. Microphones reached toward her. Ava, what's next for the Dignity Program? She smiled. It's no longer a program. It's a principle, one that belongs to everyone who believes respect should travel as freely as we do. Are you planning to take it global? One journalist asked. We already have, she replied. Every story shared, every person seen, every barrier broken, that's global impact. Later that night, a reception followed on the terrace overlooking the East River. The skyline glittered in the distance, and laughter mixed with the sound of soft jazz. Ava stood with a glass of sparkling water in hand, greeting leaders from around the world. Marcus Shaw found her near the balcony. You were incredible up there, he said, smiling proudly. Ava laughed quietly. You say that every time I speak, because you mean it every time, Marcus said. You know, I think your father would have been standing right in the front row today. Ava's voice softened. I felt him there. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the lights dance on the river. Then Claire approached, holding 2 champagne glasses. You two look too serious. Here, let's fix that. Ava smiled as she accepted one. I thought you'd never offer. Claire raised her glass. To storms that clear the sky. Ava lifted hers. To courage that doesn't need to shout. They clinked glasses. The bubbles rose, soft and bright, catching the city lights like tiny stars. Hours later, after most of the guests had left, Ava wandered back onto the terrace alone. The night was quiet now, the river calm beneath the moonlight. She leaned on the railing, letting the cool air brush her face. For the first time in months, she felt a deep, unshakable peace. She thought of Chloe, who had once trembled in apology and now stood in classrooms teaching others about empathy. She thought of the thousands of employees who had turned discomfort into growth. She thought of Claire, who had risked her career to stand beside her. And she thought of her father, always her father. His voice was still the clearest thing in her memory. The world won't always clap for you, baby. But if you do the right thing, you'll hear a quieter sound, the sound of your own soul standing tall. She smiled, whispering, "I hear it now." "Daddy." Her phone buzzed. A notification. She glanced at the screen. Marked, "Dignity stays trending." Worldwide, millions of posts, photos of employees, families, strangers holding handwritten signs that read, "Respect is the real first class." Ava laughed softly, tears filling her eyes. She took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. "You see that," she whispered. The echoes still growing. She placed her phone down on the table, took another sip of her drink, and just let the night hold her. There would be more battles ahead. There always were. But this moment was enough. A woman had been denied a glass of champagne. Now, she was toasting to change with the world. And somewhere in the hum of the city, it felt like the world was finally raising its glass back. The morning sun spilled through the glass windows of Ava Robinson's office, bathing everything in a soft golden glow. New York City hummed outside 1,000 stories in motion, each one a heartbeat in the rhythm of progress. Ava stood near the window, her reflection merging with the skyline, as if she had become part of it. It had been a year since the summit. The Robinson Foundation for Human Dignity had expanded to 32 countries. Schools, corporations, and even government agencies were adapting her framework, teaching empathy as a practice, not a policy. The movement had grown far beyond her name, and that, she thought, was the point. Lena entered quietly, holding a folder. "Morning, Ava." The board approved the mentorship initiative. "You're scheduled to speak at the opening in Atlanta next month." Ava smiled. "Atlanta? Feels right." Lena nodded. "And one more thing, there's a letter for you. Handwritten." Ava took the envelope. The paper was thick, the handwriting unfamiliar but elegant. She opened it slowly. "Dear Ms. Robinson, my name is Jasmine Cole. I'm a flight attendant at Aerostar, trained under Chloe Miller. I wanted you to know that your story changed my life. Before this job, I didn't think someone like me could represent dignity. I thought it belonged to people with power. But Chloe told us what you said, that dignity isn't given. It's carried. Thank you for carrying it first. With love and gratitude." Jasmine Ava read it twice, her eyes softening. Then she looked up, her gaze finding the horizon again. "It's working," she whispered. That afternoon, she met Marcus Shaw at their favorite cafe near Central Park. It was the same corner table they'd sat at when the storm had been at its worst. Now, the place felt lighter, like time itself had exhaled. Marcus grinned as she sat down. "You're officially unstoppable." You know that Ava laughed. "Please, don't start." "I mean it," he said. "You've built a global foundation. People quote your speeches like scripture. Even my students at Columbia are studying the Dignity program as a case study." Ava stirred her tea, smiling. "I didn't build it alone. Marcus, it was everyone who chose to listen, to act, to change." He leaned forward. "You ever stop and think about that? How one woman on one flight turned a moment of pain into a worldwide movement?" Ava's expression softened. "Sometimes. But when I do, I think less about the pain and more about the choice. That's what people forget. We always have a choice." Marcus nodded. "And you made the right one." Ava looked out the window at the park across the street. "I made the necessary one." That evening, she took a walk through Central Park. The trees were heavy with early autumn leaves, gold and crimson. The air was cool and carried the faint smell of roasted chestnuts from a vendor nearby. Children laughed by the pond. Runners passed by with steady rhythm. Life went on, unaware of the woman who had quietly reshaped a piece of it. As she walked, she noticed a young girl sitting on a bench with her mother, pointing excitedly at a plane cutting across the evening sky. "Mom, do you think the pilot can see us?" the girl asked. Her mother smiled. "Maybe not, but we can see them, and that's enough." Ava slowed, watching the girl's eyes shine with wonder. She remembered being that small looking up, dreaming of being seen, of mattering, and now, standing here decades later, she realized the full circle of it all. She had spent her life teaching others to see. The next day, she flew to Atlanta. As the plane descended, she caught sight of the familiar neighborhoods below the red brick houses, the rows of trees, the tiny corner store where her father used to buy her soda after school. Her heart felt full. The event was held at a local community center, newly refurbished by her foundation. The air inside buzzed with energy. Students, teachers, parents, all gathered to celebrate the opening of the Robinson Mentorship Initiative. Claire Donovan was there, radiant and proud. Chloe Miller, too, standing among a group of young mentors. When she saw Ava, her face lit up. Ava Chloe hugged her tightly. "You made it. Wouldn't miss it for the world," Ava said. "This is your victory as much as mine." Chloe shook her head. "No, this one's for your father." Ava smiled, eyes glistening. "You're right." They stood side by side as the ribbon was cut, applause filling the room. For a moment, Ava closed her eyes and felt the weight of everything: the journey, the backlash, the breakthroughs, and all the quiet strength it had taken to get here. Later that evening, she visited her father's grave. The cemetery was peaceful, bathed in the soft pink of sunset. She knelt down, brushing her fingers along the engraved name, Samuel Robinson. She placed a single magnolia flower on the stone. "Hey, Daddy," she whispered. "It's been a while." The wind stirred gently, as if answering. "I did what you told me. I kept my dignity, even when they tried to take it. I held on." Her voice wavered, thick with emotion. "You were right. It was never about what they give. It was always about what we choose to keep." She sat there for a while, the silence around her deep and kind. When she finally stood, she looked up at the fading sky. A single plane crossed above, its silver body glinting in the sun. She smiled through tears. "That one's for you." Weeks later, back in New York, Ava recorded a video message for the Foundation's new website. She sat in a quiet studio, dressed simply, her voice measured and warm. "When I started this journey, I thought I was fighting for justice, but what I learned is that justice is only the beginning. What we're really fighting for is belonging, the feeling that every person, no matter where they sit, front row or back row, deserves to be seen with dignity." She paused, letting the words settle. "If this story has taught you anything, I hope it's this: grace is not weakness. It's strength in stillness. Power doesn't come from how loud we speak, but from how deeply we care." Her voice softened as she ended. "And if you ever find yourself in a moment where someone tries to make you small, remember you don't have to fight to be seen. You just have to stand and let your dignity speak." The video faded to black, with her foundation's motto, "Dignity Stays." That night, Ava sat on her balcony once again, the city glittering beneath her. She sipped her tea slowly, the hum of life rising from the streets below. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to fix or fight or explain. She simply felt at peace. She had done her part. And somewhere out there, someone else would pick up where she left off: another voice, Another story, another spark of change. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Here's to the next one." A light breeze swept through the balcony, carrying her words into the night. The echo of her journey lived on, not in headlines or speeches, but in hearts, in every act of quiet courage, in every person who refused to lose their dignity, no matter how the world tried to take it. And for Ava Robinson, that was the legacy worth leaving. Ava Robinson's story is not just about a rejected glass of wine. It's about how one person chooses to maintain her dignity in the midst of injustice, not through anger, but through calmness and kindness. Ava doesn't react to win an argument. She acts to change the system. The biggest lesson from this story is dignity is not something others give us, but something we choose to maintain. No matter how unfair the world is to us, we still have the right to decide how we respond. Sometimes, silence and calmness are the most powerful voices, forcing others to look at themselves. In life, everyone will have their own flights where we are judged, doubted, or treated unfairly. But what makes us human is not how others treat us, but how we choose to face it. Remember, calmness is not weakness. It is power. It is freedom. It is the belief that you are valuable enough, even if the world has not yet realized it. If you feel the meaning of this story, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to spread humane stories where kindness and dignity are always put first.